Good day and welcome back. Taking a look at a vintage Transformer from 1989. It is Pretender Starscream, and this one was decided on by the Patreon tribe. I am almost finished the History of Transformers 1989 edition, the US releases. It's going to be two different videos this time, with the Japanese releases coming after I get the US releases done. But I wanted to take a quick hands in the shot futzing around look at one of the classic Pretenders. I actually don't have a lot of 1989 releases, but I did end up getting classic Pretenders. So I put a poll up on Patreon, and the good folks there helped decide which one we were going to look at today. Not sure how soon I'm going to get to the other ones, but today we're taking a look at Starscream. Thanks to everyone who voted on the Patreon tribe, and thanks to everyone who supports the channel over on Patreon tribe. I've never actually put the Starscream inside this guy. I picked this one up not too long ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and he just sat on a shelf, the shell in behind the little Starscream inside. And before doing this video, I just Googled some pictures of this thing to try to figure out how to put the Starscream inside, and I've just learned two things about this thing that I never knew about, because I never had them back in 1989. And these two little things actually make me like this one a heck of a lot more. So in order to fit the Starscream in here, you got to take everything off of them. And you can actually combine the tail fins into this melee weapon, which looks really cool on the Pretender shell. That's the less common way to store these on the shell. I don't see that on very many websites. The more common way is to just plug them into the side of the gun here. There's this little circle there, but that's not where it plugs into. It's too small, too shallow, doesn't plug into there. I can almost plug it into there, but it seems to be this one right here at the back. Plug in all the way there, and on the other side as well, which kind of gets in his own way a little bit. Hits the body of the shell. Makes raising it up while he's holding it a bit of an issue, but that looks really nice too. Kind of looks like a Rodimus Prime gun now. This Rodimus Prime's gun had kind of a spoiler similar to what Rodimus had on his back. But that fills out Starscream's shells rifle quite nicely. Makes it look a lot more powerful now. And also, you take the wings off of him as well. It kind of sucks that you have to take so much apart to get the Starscream in there, but this makes the shell seem so much more screamer. Just those little wings on the back. It's such a Starscream look. So that's a vast improvement. Instead of just like a weird cyan shell that really has nothing to do with Starscream. In the history of Transformers 89, I do talk a little bit about the faces on these things and how they may be inspired by the voice actors that played these characters on the show. Some sources say no, they're not inspired by the voice actors' faces. Some sources say yes, they are. This does look a little bit like Chris Latta to me, with added hair. Chris Latta didn't have a thick buzz cut like this. But the faces on these Pretenders, all of the Pretender shells, are basic enough, even at this height, that yeah, it could pass for Chris Latta, especially kind of the mischievous look that he's got here, the kind of mischievous, sinister eyebrows. And as far as articulation on the Pretender shell goes, it's just like the other ones released in the that is a problem I want to mention right now with this melee weapon. It's not actually a perfect post going into the fist. It's this kind of curved thing, so you have to kind of twist it in there, and that's what you get. Doesn't really want to stay in there, so that is an issue. He's got this giant cannon. Just the arms can do 360s. No leg articulation, no head articulation. Very basic. In order to remove the transformer inside, just like all other, well, most other Pretender shells, I should say, in 1989 we got a couple of new versions of Pretenders with some extra gimmicks to them, but this is one of the standard ones, like the ones that were released in 1988. You got to pull them apart, and there's a transformer in there. He's really snug. Some of them are loose and rattle around in there. This one is very snug, so he's a little tricky in order to get in and out. The technique I usually use for these, because it's kind of hard to get like a thumbnail in the gap in the head, I usually just go for the feet. Grab them like this, split them apart at the feet. You have to be really careful though, because they have really small posts in here. Of course it's not working while I'm actually filming this, but you don't want to break those posts. There we go. Let's seals right back up. Typical Starscream fashion. He's not cooperating. He's got an agenda of his own. How am I gonna get this thing open? Thank you, Patreon tribe, for voting for this little stinker. Okay, I got his head split open a little bit. This one is particularly stiff in order to seal and open up. I haven't done it very often. Like I said, I've never actually put the Starscream in there, but I have opened up the shell and closed it. I want to just remove everything I can that might break off this guy in order to, there we go, get a better grip on him. That's probably the best technique with this guy, is get a hold of the arm and just kind of wiggle it apart. This is a cool part of the Pretenders. Not my favorite gimmick, Transformers gimmick, by far. It's near the bottom actually. But I always like this in the Marvel comic, when the shell would open and there's a Transformer inside. Unfortunately, they don't just hop out like in the comic. This is another thing that I don't actually like all that much about Pretenders, is that some of them you gotta fold them up. You gotta do that with some of the other classic Pretenders too. It would be cool if they were just raring to go, especially this one with all his wing attachments and stuff, just pop right out. But in order to get this Starscream to fit, you have to fold his arms back. And this Transformer right here, that's not part of his transformation into a jet. The only reason this articulation is in here is so that he can fold up and fit into the shell. And it's a very tight squeeze. There's a post up here that the head is just supposed to press against, I believe. It might actually fit better if you put him in backwards. I feel like sitting backwards, you don't get that cool reveal when you open the shell up, but it seems to work a little bit better. Doesn't feel like it's plastic shell pressing on Starscream inside. And once I get this thing open again, and check and see if I broke any posts here. These are the posts that are going to break on you. Well, still in really nice condition. It's a very old piece, but I don't think I even replaced the stickers on the shell. It's in pretty nice condition. Let's seal up the shell and put the Starscream together. So you want to pull those arms out. Listen to that old plastic creaking and squeaking. So the two tail fins, they plug into each other if you want to form this melee weapon. And otherwise, while he's in robot mode, you can plug them into either hand and they turn into hand weapons. Would have been so easy for them to just put a hole in the side of the arm, and so that he could have something that kind of looked like the null ray, except I guess a fin on it. And it's an easy custom if you want to do it, but at this point, for most of my Transformers that are 30 years old, 40 years old, some of them, I'm not going to be drilling holes and customizing them. They're going to just be how they are. But that would have looked a little cooler just because it's Starscream, having the lasers in the arms instead of him holding them. Just trying to get close to that original look that the old Starscream had. And then the wings just plug into here. There's a little bit of a nub on here, which goes dead center into there. Plug on either side, and that way it's G1 Starscream-esque with the stripes and the Decepticon symbols, and a 360 of the 1989 G1 Pretender Starscream. And to convert him into jet mode, it's very easy. First thing you want to do is remove the hand cannons. Be careful, because if you pop them in too deep, these are very thin. Give you a comparison of the normal Transformers weapon post. That's the normal one. That's the same size as G1 Optimus Prime from 1984. I believe that's the same that plugs into the sides of Megatron's hands, the Headmasters, and look at this teeny tiny thin thing for the Pretender Starscream. So very fragile. And in order to transform him, hands just stay at his side. The legs look like they should do something, but they don't do anything. Just flip this up like that. Flip the wings. I guess the hands move a little bit to flip the wings. And not done yet. This part sucks if you're missing these two guns, because they're not just his weapons in robot mode, but they're parts. He's a parts former. Plug them into the back there, and instead of hand cannons, now they are the back fins. And you want to be careful back there as well. It's another breakage hazard. Plug them all the way in, and there you go. A very simplified version of G1 Starscream's jet mode, and it's pretty chintzy. I always say by 1989 the line was running on fumes, and this is one of the examples why I believe that's the case, because there's your Pretender Starscream in jet mode, and compared to the G1 version, one clearly looks better than the other. And this one did come with different attachments for the missiles. A lot of people use these ones for robot mode, and then the stubbier ones for jet mode, but I'll just have these in here for now. But yeah, much smaller Pretender version. There's nothing underneath this, like no wheels, no, like even some of the cheaper Transformer jets had just like nubs, little like spikes, so that the jet, I'm thinking Power Glide, G1 Power Glide was like that. You had little just spikes that it would sit on, and this certainly feels like they just at this point didn't care, and it wouldn't be such an issue if they hadn't cared so much for the original line, the initial year. Like this is a removable little front wheel here, because they didn't want it just, you know, laying on the ground like the Pretender one is. The cockpit opens on the original. I'm not going to turn this into a review of 1984 Starscream, but the original is just, it's not just better, but you can just tell they cared more. They tried harder. Obviously, you know, more expensive, but I don't know if it was that much more expensive once you include the Pretender shell. The price difference might not have been that much. and a side-by-side with the original one. This is kind of a cool feature, actually. You can just leave the tail fins in there, and it makes them a lot more stable. It won't tip over if you just leave those in there. Or put him back in his hands. His weapons. And that was another real letdown when the classic Pretenders came out in 1989. That they were smaller than the original. Shorter, smaller, simpler. No die-cast metal to speak of. At least they got the colors pretty right. They're both gray and blue. This one's a little lighter blue than the navy blue of the original Starscream. I'm trying to find some more nice things to say about this because I'm a big proponent of 2 compliments for every criticism, and if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. But it's clearly a step down. I don't know, I guess a big plus is it was nice to see him again. Oh, I got one for you. It added some really great stories in the Marvel comic. Simon Furman is great at polishing a turd. They gave him the classic Pretender idea, and he came up with a great concept to bring this character back because he had been dead in the comic book, as well as Grimlock, Jazz, and Bumblebee, who had been deactivated, and they got brought back, freshened up a little bit. So that's one thing. I mean, if you want to try to look at these things as less than a humongous step down from the originals, read some of those Marvel comics. I think it was in the issues in the 60s, 60-something maybe. But that was a pretty cool arc, and seeing Jazz, Bumblebee, and Grimlock be like a new sub-unit, a new trio team of classic Pretenders, getting to use their shell remotely. That's another thing. That once the Transformer comes out of the shell, the shell becomes a drone that the Transformer can remote control. At least in the Marvel comic, that's how it was. Totally different in the Japanese show. It was actually the Transformers would shrink down to human size, and these human-looking Pretender shells were human. They were actually human-sized. But in the Marvel comic, they're just, for some reason, humongous, gigantic, humanoid-looking aliens. That's my look at the 1989 Pretender Starscream. Usually at this point, I would say leave a thought in the comment spot, but I have a feeling I know what a lot of the thoughts are going to be. And you know what I always say, oh well. But thanks to the Patreon tribe for voting on this one. It was nice to futz around with it, and especially nice to find out those 2 new features where the wings can plug into the back there, and the hand weapons can turn into a melee weapon. So that's cool to find that out. Hope you and your loved ones are having a wonderful Christmas season out there. Hope you've survived the malls, the Christmas shopping rush, and if you haven't, just remember, the season is not about shopping. It's not about gifts. The thought. It's the thought that counts, not the actual physical gift. But thanks for checking out this video. Thanks for watching. Much appreciated. If you enjoyed it, feel free to hit that like button to give the video a spike, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmaste.